The diner was one of those places that smelled like hot coffee, old vinyl, and 100 overlapping conversations. It was Wednesday night, 10:30. Slow, quiet, the kind of hour when tired waitresses yawn between refills, and regulars tip a little extra for being the last ones out. But tonight, something was different. At booth 4, a young woman sat alone, hair damp from the rain, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea. Her coat was thrift store thin, and the backpack slumped beside her looked heavy with more than books. She'd ordered a single bowl of soup, and when the check came, she counted out $6.75 in nickels and crumpled bills, then left nothing else. A few feet away, the waitress, a tall blonde in her 40s named Lori, scoffed just loud enough. "Well, that's classy," she muttered, collecting the bill. The girl's ears burned red. She stood, mumbling a soft thank you, and quickly slipped toward the door. Another waitress nearby, young and trying too hard, chuckled. "Guess rent doesn't teach manners." Lori raised her voice. "Honey, if you can't afford a tip, maybe you can't afford to eat out." The bell above the door jingled, and the girl vanished into the rain. At booth 6, tucked behind a coffee and a plate of untouched pancakes, a man in a dark hoodie raised his eyes. He hadn't said a word all night, but he had seen everything. The waitress, Lori, dropped the bill tray onto the counter with more force than necessary. "Third time this week," she grumbled. "These broke kids come in here like we're a food bank." The younger waitress, Casey, leaned on the counter, chewing gum. What was that, like tea and soup? You'd think she was dining at the Ritz. They both laughed. Behind them, the line cook clanged a spatula against the grill, but didn't look up. This wasn't the first time he'd heard Lori's tone go sharp at closing time. At booth 6, the man in the hoodie shifted slightly. He wore jeans, worn at the knees, boots that had seen more pavement than polish. He didn't touch the pancakes, didn't sip his coffee. He'd been there for nearly an hour, silent, still. Lori glanced his way. "You all right, hon? You've been nursing that coffee since 9. He nodded. "You want me to heat it up?" He looked at her, eyes calm, steady. "No, thank you." Something in his voice made her pause. It wasn't rude. It was just final, like a period at the end of the sentence. She walked away. Outside, the rain tapped against the windows like soft fingers. The girl with the backpack was nowhere in sight, but her absence hung in the air. The booth she'd left behind still held the steam from her soup, still held the echo of shame. The man reached into his pocket, pulled out a $20 bill, placed it flat on the table, not for his coffee, for her soup. Then he stood, and the diner, for just a moment, slowed, because something about the way he moved said, "This isn't over." Lori spotted the man heading for the door. She called after him, mostly out of habit, "Hey, you forgot your change." He paused. Without turning around, he said, "It wasn't for me." Then he pushed open the glass door and disappeared into the misty night. Lori frowned, confused. Casey raised an eyebrow. What was that about? Lori shrugged. Weird guy. But something gnawed at her, the tone in his voice. Not angry, not self-righteous. Just quiet, steady, unbothered by what anyone thought. Outside, the parking lot was nearly empty. The man pulled up his hood and began walking, not quickly, not aimlessly, like he knew where she'd gone. The girl with the backpack hadn't gone far. 2 blocks down, she sat beneath the awning of a closed laundromat, her knees drawn to her chest, eyes fixed on a blinking vending machine across the street. The soup hadn't filled her, but the shame had. She replayed it in her head. Lori's words, the laughter, the way her coins clinked on the table like insults. She didn't cry. Not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't afford to. Not again. Then she heard footsteps. She stiffened, pulling her backpack close. But the man didn't approach fast. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "Mind if I sit?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "It's a free sidewalk." He sat 1 pace apart. Neither spoke. For a full minute, they listened to the rain. Then he said, "You don't owe anyone a performance for struggling." She turned slowly. What? You don't have to act ashamed just because you're surviving. She stared at him, eyes narrowed, suspicious, curious, and somewhere deep down relieved. She looked at him more closely now. Late 40s maybe, unshaven, rain on his shoulders. He looked like someone who could be either homeless or Hollywood, depending on the lighting. What do you want? She asked, not unkindly, just tired. Nothing, he said. She scoffed. Everyone wants something. Maybe, he replied, but not tonight. She hugged her backpack tighter, unsure how to respond. After a moment, she said, they always look at me like I'm trying to scam the world. Like buying a bowl of soup means I'm faking my whole life. I saw, he said. They don't know I sleep in my car. His brow twitched slightly. Alone. She nodded. My mom died last year. Foster care didn't work out. I aged out at 17. Got my GED. Been on my own since. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. Tonight was the first warm meal I've had in 3 days, she added, voice flat. But apparently that's not enough to be left alone. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, people confuse broken systems with broken people. She looked at him again. Harder now. You talk like someone who's seen both. He didn't answer that. Didn't need to. She set her chin on her knees. Why did you pay for me? He turned his face toward the rain, still calm. Because someone once paid for me. That shut her up. Not because she didn't believe him. Because she did. And for the first time that night, her spine loosened. Not fully, but enough to breathe. They sat in silence for a while longer, rain softening into mist around them. The vending machine across the street buzzed with flickering light. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn moaned through the fog. The city felt far away, even though it surrounded them. What's your name? She asked finally. He hesitated, then answered, Keanu. She blinked. Seriously? He smirked. Yeah, surprised. Kind of, she said. You don't look like a movie star. Good, he said. I'm not trying to. She studied him again. The eyes. The voice. Suddenly it clicked, and she stared harder. No way. He didn't confirm. Didn't deny. Just looked down at the cracked sidewalk and said, sometimes being invisible is the only way to see clearly. She shook her head, half laughing. What are you doing here? Watching, he said simply. And listening. Places like that diner. They show people for who they really are, especially when the lights are low and the tips are thin. She tilted her head. And what did you see? I saw a girl who deserved better. Her throat tightened. You know, she said, I used to think once I got out of the system, things would get easier. Keanu didn't say anything. She looked down at her shoes. Cheap canvas. Soles worn flat. They tell you to work hard. Be polite. Stay clean. But no one tells you what to do when even your best isn't enough of the world to stop treating you like dirt. You don't change the world's rules, he said softly. You remind it how it should have been playing all along. She looked up again. This time, she didn't flinch. The girl pulled her sleeves over her hands, voice quieter now. My name's Aaron. Keanu nodded. It's good to meet you, Aaron. I don't usually talk to strangers. I'm not usually this chatty. That got a smile from her. Small, but real. She tucked a strand of wet hair behind her ear. So what now? You're going to give me some deep life lesson and vanish into the mist? He chuckled. Tempting. But no. He looked down the street, where the diner's neon flickered in the drizzle. Actually, he said, I was thinking about breakfast. She blinked. It's midnight. Then we're early. He stood, stretched slightly, and extended a hand, not to pull her up, but as an offer. She stared at it, hesitated, then took it. His grip was warm, firm, not overbearing. He didn't lead her anywhere, just walked beside her. They strolled through puddles reflecting streetlight halos, their steps soft and slow. Isn't it weird, she said, that this is the most human anyone's treated me in months, and it's from someone I thought might be homeless? Keanu shrugged. Kindness isn't a tax bracket. They rounded the corner. Ahead stood a tiny all-night diner, nothing fancy. No tips required. Just coffee, eggs, and a waitress who didn't care how many quarters you had, as long as you smiled back. Keanu opened a door and nodded toward the booth by the window. Erin stepped inside, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she didn't feel like she was taking up too much space. The booth was warm, not just from the heating vent under the seat, but from a glow of old light bulbs and the sound of a tinny jukebox playing something slow and nostalgic in the background. Erin slid into the vinyl seat, still clutching her backpack. Her fingers left faint, damp prints on the table. Keanu sat across from her, calm as ever. A waitress appeared, older, gray hair tied up in a messy bun, name tag slightly crooked. She didn't ask questions, didn't stare. "Coffee," she offered. Erin hesitated. Keanu nodded. "For both of us." When the waitress walked off, Erin whispered, "Aren't you worried someone's going to recognize you?" "Most people don't expect to see someone like me in a place like this," he said. They looked past me. Erin tilted her head. "So this is a thing you do?" He gave the smallest smile. "Sometimes I check in on the world. Remind it what it's supposed to be." The waitress returned with 2 steaming mugs. Erin wrapped her hands around hers and breathed in the warmth like it was therapy. She didn't sip it. Not yet. She was still getting used to being somewhere safe. "Can I ask something?" she said after a minute. "Of course." "Why me? Out of everyone you could have helped." Keanu thought for a moment. "Because you didn't ask for pity," he said. "You asked for nothing. But you deserve something." Erin blinked hard. She hadn't cried at the diner, hadn't cried under the laundromat awning. But now, surrounded by warmth, the pressure began to break. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Keanu said nothing. He let her feel it. He let her be. And somehow, that meant more than any speech ever could. The tears didn't last long. They never did. Erin had learned early on that letting go too much made it harder to hold things together. She sniffed once, took a careful sip of her coffee, and placed the cup back down with both hands wrapped around it like she didn't trust it to stay. "I used to write," she said, staring into the steam, "before everything went sideways." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "What did you write?" "Little things. Poems. Journals. Short stories. I used to think if I wrote something good enough, someone might read it and understand me. And now, I write job applications and apology emails," she said flatly. "I don't even recognize my own voice anymore." Keanu didn't jump in with encouragement. He just waited. That, more than anything, gave her room. "I thought if I kept pushing, kept my head down, I'd climb out. But the more I try, the heavier everything feels. Like I'm climbing a staircase with no top step." He nodded. "Stairs like that are built by people who think the view isn't for everyone." She looked up. "Yeah, that's exactly it." He pulled something from his coat pocket. Folded paper, worn from travel. He handed it to her. She unfolded it slowly. It was a photocopy of an old notebook page. Faded handwriting filled the margins. A quote circled in ink. "When you can't climb, dig, make roots, grow anyway." Erin stared at it. "You wrote this?" "No," Keanu said. "Someone gave it to me when I needed it." She folded it carefully and tucked it inside her backpack. "Thanks." "You don't owe me thanks." Still, he smiled softly. In that moment, the diner was no longer just shelter. It was a greenhouse. And for the first time in a long time, something in Erin began to grow. After they finished their coffee, Erin stood slowly, unsure of what came next. Keanu slid a 10 under his mug, nodded to the waitress, and followed her toward the door. The cold outside met them like a reminder, but it didn't sting as much now. They walked in silence for a few blocks. The sky was just starting to lighten, the blackness of night giving way to that deep navy before sunrise. The streets were empty. The city hadn't decided who it wanted to be today. Erin broke the quiet. "Do you think people ever really get out? Like, actually make it out of the cycle?" "Yes," Keanu said, "but not alone." She nodded slowly. "Most of the people I met either looked through me or past me. You're the first one who looked at me like I was still worth something." "You always were," he said simply, "but it helps to be reminded." They stopped in front of an old community center. Paint peeling, windows dusty. "What is this place?" Aaron asked. "It's not much," he said, "but they have showers. Clean clothes sometimes. Wi-Fi. A few donated laptops. A woman named June inside will help you get on your feet, if you're willing." Aaron blinked. "You know people here?" "I know kind people." He pulled a folded envelope from his coat and handed it to her. Inside, a prepaid phone, a grocery store gift card, a handwritten note. "Tell June you're ready. She'll know what that means." "I can't take this," Aaron said, voice cracking. "You already did," he replied. She stared at him, part awe, part fear. Then she opened the center's door and stepped inside, not because she was ready to change everything, but because she was finally ready to try. The building was warm, not fancy, not modern, but warm in the way old quilts are, faded but full of memory. June met her just inside the lobby. Mid-60s, short silver braids, sharp eyes that saw everything. She looked at Aaron like she'd been expecting her. "You must be the one he mentioned," she said. Aaron nodded, clutching the envelope like it was a life raft. June gestured gently. "Let's get you settled, sweetheart. Come on." That morning, Aaron took her first hot shower in weeks. She ate a real breakfast. Eggs that didn't come from a vending machine. Toast that didn't have to be stolen from a buffet line. She used a computer to update her resume. She filled out a housing voucher application. She found herself smiling without meaning to. And the fear? It didn't leave completely, but it quieted. That afternoon, June handed her a thin folder. "A cafe downtown's looking for part-time help. The owner's a friend. Nothing glamorous, but honest work." Aaron stared at the address. "Do I have a shot?" June tilted her head. "You walked through that door, didn't you? That's the hardest part." Across town, in a quiet apartment above a bookstore, Keanu sipped tea by the window. He didn't check his phone. He didn't need to. He knew the pattern. He'd seen it before. Kindness didn't always bloom immediately, but given room, it grew. That night, Aaron stood in front of the cafe, hair brushed, wearing donated clothes that almost fit. She walked inside, asked for the owner, and held out her resume with both hands. She didn't mention Keanu. She didn't need to. She had arrived. The cafe wasn't like the diner. No one judged her shoes. No one stared at her hands like they were too worn to carry a tray. The owner, Rita, was in her 50s, sharp-witted, and moved like someone who used a dance. She asked Aaron a few questions, glanced at her resume, then said, "You start Monday." Aaron blinked. "Seriously? You're here, aren't you?" Rita said, "That's more than most." She left that day with a smile she didn't try to hide. It didn't fix everything. Her car was still breaking down. Her savings were non-existent. But something deeper had shifted. She had rhythm again. She had purpose. On her first shift, she spilled a cappuccino. Rita laughed, handed her a towel, and said, "Good. Now that that's out of the way, you're officially initiated." Customers smiled at her, not the pitying kind, the kind that saw her. And one day, 3 weeks in, someone left a 20 under their empty cup with a napkin that read, "This helped more than you know. Thank you." She stared at the handwriting. It wasn't Keanu's, but it might as well have been. Later that night, she opened a small notebook she now kept in her bag. She hadn't written anything for almost a year. Now the words came. Not perfectly, not powerfully, but real. She wrote about the soup, the sidewalk, the booth with the chipped mug, the man in the hoodie who didn't save her, but made her believe she was worth saving herself. She didn't sign her name, but somewhere, she hoped it would reach someone the way he'd reached her. A month later, the diner lights flickered back on. Same cracked booths, same coffee stain menus, same lorry behind the counter, though now a little quieter. She hadn't seen the man in the hoodie again, but she'd heard about him. A friend had sent her a video, a grainy TikTok clip of Keanu Reeves buying books for homeless teens at a used bookstore. She watched it 3 times, heart clenching tighter each time. She hadn't known, or maybe she had, and just hadn't looked long enough. That night, She served soup to a young woman sitting at booth 4. Alone, tired. When the check came, the girl pulled out wrinkled bills and a handful of quarters. Lori took it with both hands, then gently set down a $5 bill of her own on the table. The girl looked confused. Lori just smiled. Someone once did the same for someone else. Across the city, Keanu walked into another late-night diner. Not the same one, not a replica, but one more small place where people forgot how much others carried. He took his seat at the corner booth, ordered coffee, and waited, not for attention, not for thanks, just for the next moment someone needed to be reminded that they were seen. Not all heroes rescue. Some just remind the world how it should have behaved in the first place. Keanu didn't offer a miracle. He offered recognition. And in doing so, he helped someone remember who they were before the world tried to erase it. So the next time you witness quiet suffering, ask yourself, will you stay in your seat or will you stand up like the man at table 6? Speech balloon comment if the story made you feel something. Loudspeakers share it with someone who's ever felt invisible. Movie camera and don't forget to subscribe because kindness deserves to be seen, too.